In part one, Geoff reminisced about his indentureship to legendary horseman Tommy Woodcock.
I suppose in those days I probably didn't really know who Tommy Woodcock was. I knew later on, naturally, involved with Philippe and that, but it was 1952 and we broke up from school early December, so I went and did 2 weeks before Christmas to see whether I'd enjoy like 10 days, 10 weeks, and I said yes, I would.
Geoff looked back on a dazzling apprenticeship.
In those days, your apprenticeship was, you would sign up and you'd go right through till the age of 21, no matter how many winters you'd rode. Now, I'd lost my allowance at the age of 16, so actually I rode the last 5 years through as a fully fledged jockey.
Geoff recalled being overwhelmed by the publicity, including the creation of the nickname Golden Boy.
Well, they gave me that name when I was 15, 16, really. And you know what, I still go back home occasionally, and a lot of the boys, they still call me the Golden Boy after all those years. It's great, a lot of the old sporting personalities and that, which is great news.
He fondly remembered his association with the champion weight-for-age galloper Lord.
Kenny Ford was riding him one day in a sprint race that, mind you, would have been only a 2-year-old probably then. And about 50 metres from the post, he put his head down and really pig-rooted at a full gallop, mind you, which he had some nasty manners, but he was a great horse. Good horse for me.
Another great horse with which you formed a long-term association was Dorla Geary. Trained by Brian Courtney, he raced 69 times, he won 17 and a half, 27 placings. You rode him 12 times to success, including the 61 Cox Plate.
He was, he's well named, that horse. A lot of people don't realise. He was by a sire called High Peak. And Dorla Geary, I think, is the 4th highest mounting in, you got Mount Everest and so forth. The 4th highest mounting is Mount Dorla Geary. So he was very, very well named. Dorla Geary was never really a true 2-miler, but yet he ran 3rd and the 4th in the Melbourne Cup. And in one of them, I think it was when Lord Fury may have won.
Yep,
and
61.
He broke the record or equalled the record. And I more or less, I was there to challenge at the clock, say, and he carried, I think, 9 stone 8, Dorla Geary, whereas Lord Fury, we were giving him something like 30 pounds.
Yep. So he couldn't run 2 miles, much like Gunsynd.
Yes.
But still ran 3rd in a Melbourne
Cup. Yeah, all heart.
He was also placed in a Brisbane Cup and a Sydney Cup.
Yes.
He was a hell of a horse.
He was. Well, the Brisbane Cup, I ran second on him, and again, I think he carried something like 9 stone 10, 9 stone 12. And I forget who the chief stoke was here then, but they called us in after the race. I'm giving myself a compliment here, but he had said to Brian Courtney, he said, that's one of the best race rides I've ever seen by a young lad on a horse over such a distance carrying such a weight.
Now, you got the travel bug pretty early in life. 1961, you felt like a change, so you thought I might as well make it a decent change. Off you go to Germany.
Yes.
To ride for a most influential owner and a woman
Yes.
for whom you had great admiration.
Very much so. Very, very much so. Baroness von Oppenheim. It all fell in place, actually. Well, as I say, I'd just finished my apprenticeship and I was living at home then with my parents. And when I was approached by Miss Brabender, who was a press reporter from Germany, approached me and asked me would I be interested, because I'd met her when I rode that double in Sydney, and we became sort of friends. So that's how the job eventuated, and I went there, and the stable, we had 22 horses in work, but unfortunately there was a virus went through the whole of the racing in Germany, and we hardly had any runners. I may have had about 28 rides, 30 rides for the stable alone. But then I did pick up a few other rides. She would allow me then, say, I'd go to Austria or Denmark and ride in races there. And she was a wonderful lady. Spoke 7 different languages. And I kept in touch with her really right up until she passed away. used to keep in touch, corresponding.
She was a woman of some wealth, substantial wealth,
Yes.
who absolutely loved her horses.
Very much so. They supplied me with a fully furnished apartment on the Rhine River in Cologne. I was based in Cologne, Cool. I also had lived in the castle at a place called Quadrath, and that's where the stud farm was. And that was about a 45-minute drive out of Cologne. So I had the both, but she supplied me with a Mercedes-Benz car, and I had the butler, and I had the whole work. So I was really spoiled.
Yeah, I'll say.
Very much spoiled.
You were an unusual jockey. Apart from boundless talent, you also had an insatiable appetite. You fancied a potato chip, you fancied a chocolate, you fancied a wide range of lollies. In fact, you got the nickname at one stage, the Chocolate Kid.
Well, I still do fancy those things. Well, mind you, because I used to love my milkshakes, yes. Yeah, because I would be going to the country meetings and that, and I'd be with some trainers who would take me along, and they'd pull up and maybe have a beer or something on the way home, and so I'd go to the milk bar next door and have a milkshake, and that was something people played up. But
Jockeys don't do that.
Have milkshakes? No. But it was very difficult too in those early days. There were no such thing as sauna baths and so forth. You would sort of dress your horse, clean your horses with the plastics on, and run and jog, or you'd go somewhere and you'd fill the bath up with butcher salt and rub and lose the weight that way. Wrap the towels and that around the body. But you think back the old days, it was harder, but it was good fun.
In the 63-64 season, I doubt that anybody in racing was surprised when you made the announcement that you were finished. You couldn't face one more day of torture.
I did. I gave up race riding, not knowing what I would do. So what do?
You stayed away for 3 seasons.
I did, yes. What did I do? I went into the restaurant business. And I had my own restaurant in St Kilda Road, Melbourne, and I called it like Geoff Lane's Bistro. And I had all girls in the staff who'd wear like the miniskirt and famous racing colours of horses and that I rode, or famous horses that raced.
You had a promotional flair.
And then the race book was like, the menu was like a race book. You'd open up race 1, oysters, so forth, race 2, and had a little band dancing and that in the evening. So that's where we got the name discotheque, because like music, dancing, and the tech was like you can go and have a steak, or like a bistro sort of thing. So that was hard. Actually, that was more hard work than being a jockey.
Now you obviously ate with the customers most nights.
By this time now, I had got married. It was 1966, and Joni and myself, and so Joni was great. She put me on this diet. We went on this diet, and the weight started falling off. So then I went back, started riding track work, and next thing I knew, I'd applied for a licence. And there was a little filly mare called Stellar Bell that came across from New Zealand.
Trained by Ivan Tucker.
And I'd been riding her work, and I thought, now she'll be my first ride back, hopefully. But the VRC wouldn't not relicense me for that meeting, which she won. I think it was the CF4 Stakes. Harry White finished up riding her.
Yeah.
And about 2 weeks after that, they then gave me the licence. And I came out, and she was my first city winner back, as won the Craigley Stakes. I think it was on her then.
So Stella Bell was the little mare from New Zealand to relaunch your career, but you needed a quick follow-up, and a bloke called Graham Hegney provided you with that. Jimmy Johnson was unavailable for a short time.
Yes.
Geoff Lane jumps on Tobin bronze in a couple of races.
Yes. What a magnificent animal. Look, as soon as you got legged up, well, on most champions you could feel something, but he the wither on that on him, it was so strong. You could feel the strength in it with him. And as I say, going back, to the Marco sort of thing, that always brought memories. And I won the big race, or a welter race, I think it was, at the Valley.
Yep.
And I think he started something like 10-1. He was big value. And then I came out and won the Toorak handicap on him, carrying 9 stone 12.
Correct.
I'm not sure what that is in now terms, because the old 9 stone 12.
Plenty.
It's plenty. I presume it would be if I rode him at that. So
Yeah.
But they were the only 2 rides I had on him. Now, the following week, he was to run in the Caulfield Cup, which I don't know whether I could have rode him or not, but Jimmy Johnson had been riding him prior,
Yep.
so Jimmy rode the Caulfield Cup, which he won, duly
Yeah.
won, and it was after that he was then sold to America.
To run in the Washington International.
Yes, but I think he won first up, then he ran in the International.
Your old boss, Tommy Woodcock, recognised the fact that you were back, and he came up with a filly called Chosen Lady.
Yes.
You won the Edward Manifold and the Victorian Oaks on your comeback trail.
Yes. Actually, we really sort of combined together again, and I won a lot of races, for the old boss, even in the comeback. So, that's, and I think maybe I may have won the Derby on the same year or the following year on a horse called Always There.
You certainly did. You've led me to this next point. In 1968, a big punting owner by the name of Philippe Ishmael, spent a fortune setting up an operation in Melbourne, and he invited Geoff Lane to be his number 1 jockey. What an opportunity.
Yes, it was myself, and I think Kevin Mitchell used to also do a lot of riding, but I was more or less doing all the heavyweight riding, and he was a wonderful man. I tell you, he came to Australia. He may have been a little bit big for Australia racing at that time, but the man himself was a wonderful person.
Now, his star performer in that era was Always There.
Yes.
Horse was very good to you. Moonee Valley Stakes, Victoria Derby, Sandown Guineas.
I won 7 out of 8 on Always There, and the only race I got defeated was the AJC Derby, and it was going up the rise at Randwick, and I'd called out to Athol G. Mully for the inside run. He was moving, and I got halfway up, but he rolled back across. I lost ground. We flashed home and ran 3rd. So
No
that was the only time I ever got defeated.
Yeah.
And I said to Babe, there's no way they'll beat this horse in the VRC Derby, which he duly came out and won.
Well, during the summer of 1968, Philippe Ishmael incurred the wrath of the stewards to the tune of 2 years over a horse called Red Diver.
Yes.
He wound down his Melbourne operation,
Yes.
and you were out of a job. Big setback.
Well, it did set me back a little bit, mind you, because riding for an owner like that and a big team of horses, which he had. Unfortunately, I think he tried to sell most of the horses to America, but that sort of failed. Actually, Always There went over there at the stud farm, and he wasn't very successful. That was a very sad moment.
So you came to Queensland for a short stint where you had a few rides, but you also had a surprise invitation.
We were going to go to Brisbane for 2 or 3 months, and it was over the carnival here. And there were a few horses here from Melbourne and Brisbane from Melbourne, so I was riding them track work. And it was during that period I was then offered a job in Hong Kong. So I had to make up a quick decision what to do. And I went to Hong Kong on an 8-month contract.
So you went to Hong Kong as an active jockey.
Yes.
And you rode on for a few years there.
Yes.
But the other part of the job was to instruct the local riders.
Well, the first part, I rode for 7 years, from 71 or 8 years to 79. And then at the age of 40, the then Royal Hong Kong Jockey Club approached me and asked me would I be interested in becoming assistant starter and also teaching the local apprentice boys, which, as I say, struggling with my weight. I'm 40 years of age, so I accepted that job. I did that for 4 years. Then they approached me to see if I was interested in becoming a stipendiary steward, which I did, and I did that for 6 years. So in actual fact, I did 10 years on the official side.
Now, your days as a steward were probably not your most rewarding or enjoyable. You felt deep down that it wasn't really Geoff Lane.
It was, yeah, it was a job, but see, in the mid-70s net, I'd been applying for a trainer's licence, and I kept, reneged. Yeah. So maybe they had in the back of their mind all the time, they wanted me to become, an official. So eventually what happened, this year there was a very limited, short list of trainers applying for a licence, and I'd let them know that I was still very interested, and I finished up with a trainer's licence. So it worked out well because the retiring age for an executive, say, was 55. For a trainer, it was 65. So I got an extra 10 years then.
You started in 1989 in Hong Kong.
Training, yes.
Training, and the very first horse you saddled up was one of the best you've prepared, Morning Patrol.
True, yes. Yeah, great little horse, Morning Patrol, and he was ridden by a former Sydney apprentice called Peter Lation.
In 2004, you reached the official retirement age in Hong Kong. The only way you could continue to train was to move to Macau and reapply. You've done that.
That's right. Once I reached the age of 65, as I say, they wouldn't relicense me. And what I even thought about coming back to Australia and moving, say, up to the Gold Coast. And, have a small team in work and enjoy that. And as we mentioned earlier in the program, is that I was very, very close with Scobie Breesley. And Scobie suggested I go across to Barbados. And he introduced me to some owners. And so Joni and myself, we flew across and we, checked all that out. I went to track work and met different people. But I'm afraid it was much too quiet for me over there after living in Hong Kong for so long. So we came back to Hong Kong, and then eventually I've moved across the water to Macau.
Well, you've mentioned Joni on several occasions.
I have
Obviously a lady of poise and patience and understanding and devotion.
Yes.
Because she's been happy to travel the world and support you every step of the way.
That she has. We've been married coming up in October. It'll be 41 years of marriage. And been very fortunate. We have 3 wonderful children. We have a Samantha, Samuel and Natasha. So it's a very close-knit family, and even though we live in Hong Kong, and Samuel, he lives in Australia, in Brisbane. Samantha, the eldest daughter, she lives in New Zealand, and the younger one, Natasha, she lives in America. So that's why we have to travel a lot.
Did Joni come from a racing background?
No. Joni was, she was a hairdresser.
How did you meet?
Well, it was through her brother-in-law. He was a jumping jockey called Pat Logan. And we'd be in the sauna bath, and I'd say to Pat, when are you going to introduce me to your sister-in-law? And Pat would say, you go and get that phone number yourself. And that's how it all started, actually.
Yeah.
So,
And has she been happy to live in different parts of the world?
Yes. People are fascinated to think, well, we've lived overseas for now 36 years it is, and we've never actually lived in a house. We've always lived in an apartment, and the children, they were living in apartments also. And people say, well, how come, no backyard? How did the children survive and live through it all? But it was a total different way of living, and you do get spoiled in Asia. You have your drivers and maids and so forth. It's a nice way of living.
But the Aussie strain is tugging at the heartstrings, and I suspect that you're going to finish your days back home in Oz?
I think eventually, like personally myself, I still call Australia home. That is 100%. And I think eventually, yes, we will return home. When, I'm not quite sure, but I guess one day, maybe.
For a little fellow who could have died from the ravages of meningitis before he turned 1, it's been a fantastic journey, hasn't it?
Racing has been very good to me. I've met some wonderful people in racing. I feel as if I have given a lot back to it also. But in travelling the world, as I say, met many, many wonderful people and big names, even movie stars, like travelling through the States.
All with an interest in racing. Gregory Peck, for instance, was a great racing.
Yeah, and then he came to through Hong Kong. They made the big movie here in Australia, and he came to Hong Kong on the beach.
Mm.
And when Macau first opened up, it was harness racing. Now you'd love that, trotting. And for the opening, they brought out Gregory Peck, Jane Seymour, Muhammad Ali. It was all there for the opening of the harness racing in Macau, which eventually closed, and that's how the gallop started.
Wouldn't change a thing?
No. No way. Wouldn't even think about it. Would not think about it. Because, as I say, from that little boy sitting on the floor doing my own form, and as one thing I've always regretted, in the late 40s there used to be a jockey called Lenny Lott, whom I used to follow. And I always regret not ever meeting the gentleman. Others I did, like Reggie Heather. I remember being at Corfu one day and I saw Arthur Ward going out riding a horse called San Domenico. And here I am, I finished up riding for Arthur Ward in Hong Kong, as a trainer. And Reggie Heather, great rider. He was one of my first big wins was on a horse called Cowboy Bill, and I won the Standish Handicap. It was a straight 6 race at Flemington, and Reggie Heather rode a very good horse in Flying Halo, and he flashed home, and I just sort of fell in and beat him. I would have been about, 16 years of age, I suppose. And names like that, you never forget them. As I say, even Sydney, you had your George Moore, Neville Selwood. Another guy I got very close, Ray Selkridge. Billy Kamer, well, he was always a character in himself. And then later in life, I had there was Alan Yeomans, and we served more or less the same time, our apprenticeship, and then Alan had the nasty fall. And I used to go and visit him nearly every third day in hospital. He's in hospital for 18 months, 2 years in Melbourne. And we became very close. In fact, when he married, the first child they had was a boy, and they called him Lane Yeomans. And he rode for a while. And it's like, but we mentioned earlier in the program, Kelly Chapman, who had Farquhar, and we were very close. And the same there. When he got married, the first child, they called him Jeffrey. So
great honour.
Great honour. Yeah, great honour. And you get it'll all come back, names and people one has met.